Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix, Meet with the Media, tons of content, a lot of bullshit as well, but tons to dig into. This is Marlins Uncorked. Greetings from England and welcome to Marlins Uncorked with me, Peter Pratt. Hit me up, of course, at Miami_Marlins_UK. Happy Monday, guys. Spring is underway, and we have a Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix presser to dig into. 8 minutes. 8 minutes of fire from the dynamic duo, Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix. A lot covered. A lot covered in that. So we're going to be digging into all of the key themes. If you're watching, you can see the rundown. So we're going to be digging into that. There's also more. There's tons in here. This may need to be a double episode extravaganza. So stick with us. Live streaming here as well. Plus, this episode is free to air and available everywhere after this live stream on YouTube, on podcast channels, wherever you get your content. Reminder, there is also a Patreon service. So if you want more and you want the rest of the episodes this week, then go and subscribe to the Patreon. It's £3, $4-ish a month at this point. Super cheap, and everyone's getting hyped. Everyone's optimistic, right? Everyone is optimistic about the Marlins, particularly Bruce Sherman. No doubt about it. Loads of sound bites here today, and I'm looking forward to digging into them. Like I said, 8 minutes of content. Main takeaways. Bruce Sherman was optimistic. He used that word many, many times. There was also the use of the term, the vibes. The vibes are high, both by Bruce Sherman and Peter Bendix. They may be both of them too old to be using that type of language and terminology, but nevertheless, I'll let it slide. I mean, I think Bendix is younger than me, and I think I do use that term, so that's fine. We'll give him a pass on that. But Bruce Sherman calling out the vibes are high. Bruce Sherman in this intro, there was a lot of flexing. There was a lot of bragging from Bruce Sherman. It was a very interesting presser. There was a lot of bragging, but none of it linked to the products really on the field and the expectations for this season. As we know where the Marlins are at this point. We know we are we are almost at rock bottom. We are one step away from rock bottom, and we know what that step is. We're going to talk about that later because, well, he's listed out on this rundown. We're one step removed from rock bottom in this rebuild. Bruce Sherman, though, was absolutely flexing and bragging. He wanted to call out that the Marlins, I mean, this is hysterical in some ways, but the Marlins now have the second biggest weight training facility in Major League Baseball. I mean, come on. We now have the second biggest weight training facility. I mean, PJ Morlando will be absolutely all in. I mean, Morlando is absolutely now in the right organization, knowing that it's got the second biggest weight training facility in Major League Baseball. Boy, oh boy. We also now, Bruce Sherman again, flexing, calling it out that the Marlins have now got one of the largest front office staffs in all of baseball now. So, in Bruce Sherman at this point, like, bigger is better. Bigger front office, more technology, biggest weight room. We're about to knock down the minor league complex that's been delayed by a year, but that's going into a rebuild as well. It's all happening here for the Marlins, but a lot of bragging from Bruce. We then get to the product on the field. And, Bruce, for me, when you start calling out that your off-season highs are the sheer number of minor league free agents you can't flex on the number of minor league free agents that you've added to the roster. Come on. I'm not having that. I just wanted to, let's dive into the free agent piece. I know the rundown doesn't quite align to this, but I do want to call that out because I think for most fans, that's the kind of the two bits that we're really going to pay attention to right now. We're talking about the roster, the free agent moves, because that's always what happens in the offseason. That's the focus. And then, of course, you've got Sandy Alcantara, and that's the other focus too. And that's what I mean about rock bottom. We're one step removed from rock bottom of this rebuild. But for Bruce Sherman, there has been in previous seasons, there has been free agent moves. And frankly, I don't think any of them have worked. So, and I've said it, listen, that's the beautiful thing of Twitter. You can look back and you can see, what did I say? What was I feeling at that moment in time back in 2022 or 23? I think I pretty much said, like, from a Marlins perspective, I'm happy for the Marlins not to really, engage in the free agent market. It's been unfruitful for them, particularly on the offensive side, because what we did see with Cal Quantrill the other day is you got a pitcher that's coming from Coors and is very happy to go to Miami. I get it from a pitching standpoint. But the Marlins have had an offensive problem for many, many seasons. They've tried to address that via various moves, trades, more successfully via trades, free agency, and in free agency, it's not really worked. And the reality is the Marlins are pretty much bottom of the list of where a free agent wants to go. So like Avisail Garcia, pretty much he had no market really. And somehow the Marlins felt they had to overpay to go and get Avisail Garcia. It didn't work, and it didn't work. And it was clear that it didn't work from about the second game, maybe the second game in spring. I don't know. But I am not here to pile into Bruce at this point to say, Bruce, you should have signed more free agents this offseason. Not at all. Not at all. I am all in. Listen, the path is chosen. The path is chosen, and there's no need to be spending money on free agents that aren't going to deliver anything anyway. There's no point. The Marlins have juiced the farm. Let's see some of these young dudes. I think the fans are fine with that. So I'm perfectly fine with that approach of not signing any free agents and, not another Tim Anderson or an Avisail Garcia, as I mentioned. They did need to address the innings situation, and they've started to do that with Cal Quantrill from last week. I think there'll be another move similar to that potentially. We'll wait to see. And again, as these rosters, as we start to get towards the season, you get into the situation where there could be a few little sneaky trades that the Marlins could make too. They have full roster flexibility. Frankly, most of the dudes on their 40-man can be removed and will probably pass through waivers. That's where we're at with the talent right now. But other clubs with more talent, less flexibility, creates opportunity for the Marlins, in my opinion anyway. I have to look at the Detroit Tigers. I have to look at Spencer Torkelson, only because of that name. And I think back to years ago, how the Marlins were tanking for Tork. They didn't get there. The Tigers gazumped them. And Torkelson really, to me, in my opinion anyway, it looks like his career in Detroit is cooked. And I look and think, that's the type of move. A former stud, you've now got the biggest front office, the best coaching staff, the second biggest weight room. Imagine Spencer Torkelson with the second biggest weight room in Major League Baseball. What could that do for Spencer Torkelson? I'd like to find out. Frankly. Why not? It's the type of deal. It's the type of move that Kim Ang used to make for pitchers. She'd go and scoop up like Jesus Luzardo, like Ryan Weathers, these former stud prospects that have flamed. Their career is stalled wherever they are. Kim Ang would spot that, make a move, send it to Mel. Mel would polish them up. And next thing is you've got Jesus Luzardo and you've got Ryan Weathers doing what they do. Spencer Torkelson is the reverse of that. It's not the reverse, but it's the offensive version. Let's go and get Tork. Let's get him into this organization. Let's get him into the weight room, and let's see what this front office and this new approach can do. I'm all in on that. And so, like I mentioned, as we get through spring and some of these rosters start to be squeezed, creates opportunities for the Marlins. So I don't think this roster is done. I mean, there's a lot of people, you could pretty much probably name what you think the opening day roster is right now. That being said, I mean, Xavier Edwards is a lock on there. I don't think he should be playing shortstop, by the way, but he's a lock on the roster. Otto Lopez, for some, is a lock. I think, frankly, you could move on from Otto as well. I'm looking at that projected offensive group, and apart from Xavier Edwards and Dane Myers, because I'm all in on Dane, by the way, apart from those two dudes, the rest of them, for me, are interchangeable. Jesus Sanchez, I think, definitely is a name. I also think that Jesus Sanchez will be traded this year, as will Sandy. We'll talk about him later in the show. But, the Marlins, and this creates a ton of opportunity. They didn't speak about that in this presser, so I'm not going to carry on that. That's going to be another episode for another day, but it's going to be very interesting. But for Bruce to come in flexing, bragging about all these things was pretty hilarious, to be honest with you. But that's what you have to do at this point. Like, the Marlins fans, myself included, everyone listening to this show, we follow the team because we want the team to do well. At this point, we know where we are in this curve, where we know 2025 is a developmental year, however you want to phrase it. Guys are going to be given opportunities. Bruce Sherman, though, is optimistic, as he mentioned multiple times. He also thinks that we're going to win more games than maybe most people and projections say. I think that's, maybe because the bar is set so incredibly low for the Marlins this season. Although I did see something, again, on Twitter, because that's where I see everything, talking about how this Marlins group, has one of the highest projected WARs of any Marlins roster ever, or something along those lines. Please add that tweet in Twitter if you know that tweet and you can add it to me. Maybe I'm wrong, but I feel like there's a lot of high projections seemingly for this Marlins group, which is very, very interesting, no doubt. There's a lot of variance here, and I'm very excited to see how some of the guys do. But I think we all acknowledge that this Marlins group will not be anywhere near competing for anything. Let's hope it doesn't start 0-10 or something ridiculous so the season is cooked before the end of March. Like, I think all we hope for is maybe the Marlins kind of hover around-ish about 500 or just below, and it's not just like a complete wash in the first 10 days, which it was last season, it was disgraceful and ridiculous. The interesting thing about this presser, though, that really stood out to me is, although Bruce Sherman called out that he was optimistic for this group in the future, and I understand why, because the Marlins are investing heavily into, well, not on the field product stuff. They're investing in their future, the foundations, and I completely get it. Bruce Sherman still has a job to do to try and seem optimistic about the season ahead, trying to call out that we're going to win a few more games than maybe you expect in one soundbite. However, later on in the presser, he kind of let the mask slip by accident, where he almost went as far as saying that I don't care about the win-loss record. He didn't. He went, I don't care, and then stopped himself. He kind of hit the pause button. He realized what he was about to say, and what he was about to say, you're not allowed to say really out loud. But he went to say, I don't care about the wins and losses this year. Previously, he said that the Marlins would actually win more games than maybe most anticipate. Nevertheless, Bruce almost said out loud what everyone knows, but he did stop himself. So well done to Bruce for stopping himself. Couple of other bits that really stood out to me from Bruce Sherman. Like I mentioned, the vibes thing. Definitely, they obviously had a rah-rah session in the clubhouse, and he came away feeling buzzed about what he'd heard from the new manager and all that kind of thing. Felt like a little bit of a shot towards Skip Schumacher in some ways. Clayton's come from a winning culture and he's delivered this and all that. I mean, listen, Skip knows what it's like to win as well. And Skip, I've never seen a manager set a culture in a way before like Skip Schumacher did with the Marlins organization, and that played out. So very interesting. I think the Bruce has fired a little secret shot there at Skip Schumacher. Interesting. Don't know exactly what went on last year. Don't know. Nevertheless, Skip Schumacher's situation was leaked early in the season. Who leaked that? Probably Skip. Was the relationship starting to fracture? Probably. Skip Schumacher no longer with the Marlins. So everything is new. Okay. So apart from Bruce Sherman flexing on everything that he's delivered about how he's rebuilding a minor league stadium, how the Lone Depot is going to be immense, how they've got the second biggest weight room, how they've got everything seemingly apart from any free agents. And then he then had to go a step further to brag about the number of free agent signings that the Marlins have made. We then get to the key topic that's on everyone's list. So I'm glad it was asked, and I'm glad we got some detail back, because through the questions and the answers, you start to ratify what is in our minds. Let's be honest, Sandy Alcantara, and I spoke about it on this show already. I've only done 3 episodes, but probably every single episode I've spoken about Sandy. Why? Because Sandy is the Marlins' best player by some margin. He's probably 7 levels above everyone else at this point. That includes Xavier Edwards and anyone else you care to mention. Sandy Alcantara is at that top echelon. The contract situation is immense. Again, actually, Bruce Sherman bragged about that too within today's presser, bragging that he did that extension. Bruce even wanted to throw that. Hey, I did that. Remember that? I did that one. Bruce did that too. Yep, he extended Sandy, and it was a stunning extension. And it remains a stunning extension to this day. 3 years to roll, all of them below market value for a guy. And again, the guy's called it out. He's looking sensational already. However, we then get into the more painful point that when asked about what a full season of Sandy would look like, and if that is even if they're going to commit to that, unfortunately, Peter Bendix actually, I think, took the lead on this one. They were non-committal. They wanted to talk about opening day. I'm sensing that Sandy won't be moved before opening day. However, because, it's Sandy and Skeens. And that is a very enticing matchup and would sell a lot of tickets. Wouldn't it be very interesting if, all of a sudden the Marlins had a massive offer before opening day, but the season tickets were sold? The tickets were sold. Next thing is, you haven't got Skeens Sandy because he's been moved, and you've got Quantrill versus Skeens opening day. I don't know. But I think, the feeling is that Sandy will be here opening day. That's what Craig Mish has put out there. And listen, if Craig is saying that publicly, then, he's been told that publicly, or privately, but sharing that publicly. So good. We have Sandy for at least one start. That's what we commit to. Peter Bendix would not commit to anything else beyond that, seemingly into the future. I will not speculate about what the future will do. I can't speak about the future, something along those lines. Listen, Sandy is the Marlins' best player on the best contract. And if you were keeping Sandy in 2025, at least in that moment, in that presser, you would say it. You would say it. Bruce wants to brag about everything. And Bruce didn't feel the need to brag, other than the fact that he extended Sandy. He didn't feel the need to brag that Sandy Alcantara will be a Marlin for 2025. He couldn't do it because he knows what's going to happen. We know, Sandy knows, everyone knows, the league knows. The question is, when will Sandy be moved? So painful for the Marlins. And that will be rock bottom. That moment when Sandy is traded and everyone's digging into the return, and there's names that we've never heard before and names that probably we'll never see, that will be rock bottom for the Marlins fan base at that point. We're a year in at this point, but that moment, whenever it is, and I think it will come sooner rather than towards the deadline. I think from a Marlins standpoint, I think they'll look to try and do it sooner rather than later. I think before the end of June. I don't think they take it to the deadline, but that will be rock bottom for this Marlins fan base and for this rebuild. That will officially make it official. Doesn't even make sense. But you know what I'm saying. And Peter Bendix and Bruce Sherman, they couldn't commit to anything beyond that. And because then, it's all well and good for Bruce Sherman to be optimistic about the season ahead for whatever reasons. And it's okay for him to say publicly that the vibes are high right now and that guys are going to be given opportunities. All of that is true. It is true. Maybe not. I don't think Bruce Sherman really is overly optimistic about the Marlins' opportunity to make the playoffs this year. But I think if Bendix and Bruce Sherman come out and say Sandy will be a Marlin in 2025, then I think they'd be straight up lying. And I think the fact that they didn't say that proves what we already know. So we should embrace Sandy. We should enjoy it. We should enjoy Sandy. I certainly am. Like I've already said, seeing him back last week, throwing baseballs with a Marlins jersey on, it just brings me so much joy. He's such an important part of this organization. He's been huge for the Marlins. And my Marlins fandom, only goes back a handful of years. So when I think of the Marlins, I think of Sandy. Prior to that, I think of Jose Urena. So we've come a long way since then. But we all know where this is going. Let's just briefly talk about Peter Bendix in this presser, by the way. There was a very interesting duo act, by the way. Bruce Sherman and Peter Bendix, and they're kind of flicking between each other. Bruce would say something, and Peter Bendix would kind of say, hey, I agree, but I just want to add on a bit more, and back and forth and back and forth. Normally, it's just like, Bruce, you start, take some questions. Bendix, you come on. What are you thinking? Take some questions. It's a very interesting kind of double act. Not to say they were kind of bouncing off each other, but nevertheless, Peter Bendix, and my main takeaway, other than the content that was delivered, the little nuggets, and there is a few from Peter Bendix to talk about. But the one thing that stood out to me was the words per minute ratio felt really high for Peter Bendix. Like, normally, yes, he has that kind of exuberance maybe and does talk pretty fast, which is fine. But this was like the fastest I've ever heard him speak. Like, if there was a point to make, he made it. And he used a lot of words in a lot of minutes, or not a lot of minutes, sorry. So normally when you do that, it's normally a sign of anxiety. You speak fast. Just take a breath. Take a breath. It's the first time I would say that I've seen Peter Bendix anxious. And I felt the anxiety today coming through. Let me know your thoughts. Did you feel the same? Was it normal? Am I just misreading that? For me, he just spoke very fast. And I guess for Peter Bendix now, it's a year in. Bruce Sherman has invested a lot of money, seemingly, into this new plan. And I think into year 2 for Peter Bendix, the pressure ratchets up an extra notch, I guess, right? Like, he's sold this vision to Bruce Sherman. And now's the time to start seeing some development from that. You can't have the biggest front office, biggest coaching staff, and if players stay the same or get worse in the main, then, is that on Bendix? Is that on the players? I don't know. But you've got to hope that guys start to take the next step. They start to, kick on. Just on that, I think very interesting point that stood out for me was that someone asked about Connor Norby. Everyone always asks about Connor Norby. Connor Norby, though, 2 main things that stood out. Third base was mentioned. All-star, potential all-star was mentioned. So Bendix is high on Connor Norby, and third base was mentioned too. I was trying to look and think about, like, how's this Marlins defense going to shape up? Actually, just one other thing from Bruce Sherman that he called out while I talk about the defense, because this is bothering me. Bruce Sherman, he said that we're going to have a fast team. An exciting team, a fast team, and a better defensive team. I think those were the 3 points that he made. Boom, boom, boom. We're going to have an exciting team. We're going to be fast and going to be better defensively than last year or maybe years prior. I don't know. So I'm a little bit concerned. I'm not quite seeing that personally. And in advance of this presser, I was starting to look at the spring battles that's going to go on and jostling for positions, etc. Connor Norby, it feels, Bendix just said it. He sees him as an all-star. He's going to be given every opportunity. Okay, great. Xavier Edwards, it was the standout offensive producer. He's going to be given it. I look, go to Baseball Savant and have a quick look at what Xavier Edwards did at shortstop. It is the first percentile in terms of range at shortstop. Like, the worst range shortstop there was in the league, seemingly. Xavier Edwards. He's not a shortstop. So the Marlins, in the most premium position, they have one of the worst defensive players, seemingly. Connor Norby, third base. Look at his, the blue. He didn't quite play enough there to get like the true read, but let's just say he's 15th percentile. Like, Connor Norby is not a good third baseman. He hasn't played there before, granted. And so, it's fine. You need to take time to learn. It's all good. And boy, oh boy, we saw some clips today. Just speaking about third baseman, there's some guys out there fielding grounders at third. Boy, oh boy, is the death row third baseman where you've got, I think, Davison De Los Santos, I think, was taking some. Jacob Berry was behind him. He bobbled one. The Marlins don't have any answers at third base whatsoever, hence Connor Norby there. So, it's interesting approach. But Connor Norby's not good at third base. Xavier Edwards is not good at shortstop. Otto Lopez is good at second base, no doubt about it. But the Marlins are not going to be a good defensive group in 2025, in my opinion. If that's the mix of You know, and let's even throw Augustin Ramirez into the mix, a catcher, if indeed he is a catcher, and I don't think he is. But, you know, that left side of the infield, Norby and Edwards, is way below average, way below average. And if your left side of your infield is way below average, then bad news, you do not have a good defensive team. So I don't expect that to be the case for the Marlins. So either Bruce Sherman is overly optimistic, he doesn't know, or maybe there's things that we don't know, or he expects Xavier Edwards, Connor Norby to make massive steps forward. I don't know. We'll wait to see. But he did talk about Connor Norby, Peter Bendix, and seemed high on him. He did talk about leadership and the fact that leaders will emerge. And I think that's true. I think this group is so young that, you know, guys will emerge and they will grow into themselves in some capacity within this group, because they kind of have to. We know Sandy's the leader of the pitching staff, but Sandy's not going to be here all year. Who's going to step up then? We'll wait to see. Is it Cal Contrell's group? I don't know. Wait to see. But from a position player standpoint, you know, there's so many young dudes there, and there is going to be a lot of competition, and I like that. There is going to be a lot of competition, a lot of battles, all young, hungry dudes. It is going to be fun and intriguing to watch. But it's not going to equate to an amazing product on the field, clearly. Like I said, pretty much, other than Xavier Edwards, I would say, the majority of that roster could be optioned to AAA and replaced, and, you know, you wouldn't miss a beat, effectively. Stowers hasn't shown anything to me. Griffin Conine was unprotected on multiple Rule 5 situations. You know, he finally got his shot. Good for Griff. I like Griff. I want him to do well. What I'm saying is, like, he finally got his chance, kind of. You know, he could easily be optioned back down, right? He's not a difference maker at this point. He's just a young guy trying to make his way. And I hope he does. I hope Griff does well. I hope Dane does well. I hope Stowers does well. I hope all these guys do well. I hope everyone does well. I want to see him do well. But I think the most likely outcome is that they probably won't. So, very interesting presser. Very interesting. Optimism from Bruce Sherman. A lot of bragging. I mean, that will stick with me. The second biggest weight training facility in Major League Baseball. That's the main thing that sticks with me. The vibes are high, but I think bragging about minor league free agent signings, I mean, come on, Bruce. But I expected nothing less. I'm completely fine with the approach the Marlins have taken this offseason, considering the path we're on. Fine with it. I'm fine with it. But to brag about it, come on. You don't have to brag about that. The main takeaway, though, is Sandy Alcantara, the Marlins, Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix, they're non-committal to him for the future because they know they're going to move Sandy, and they know it's just a matter of time. They're seeking the best deal. They need him to be healthy. They need him to look good. And as soon as he does, he will be gone. What did we see with Jesus Luzardo this offseason? Jesus Luzardo was injured pretty much the majority of last season. You head into this offseason, you think, okay, Jesus Luzardo, let's get him healthy. Let's get him back, and then let's sell at value. Well, actually, what we end up having is rumors that the Cubs wanted to do a deal. They then backed out because there were some, health concerns. They then moved Luzardo on, in advance of, returning to the Phillies. And, maybe they like the package. I don't know. But that just shows to me, there's no reason to hang on to Sandy. As soon as the package, as soon as that deal emerges, then you pull the trigger. We saw it last offseason with Luis Arias. They'd spoke to the Padres in the offseason. They didn't get a deal done then for whatever reason. Maybe a few names, didn't quite match up there, whatever it might be. As soon as the Marlins came out the blocks dead, they went back to it. They got a deal done. They pulled the trigger. Bendix will pull the trigger on Sandy sooner than you think, in my opinion. It may not be as soon as the Luis Arias deal, but I don't think he'll be far off, particularly if the Marlins start slow. Overall, and I do like this, though, by the way, from Bendix, and we have seen this as well. I'd say in the last, 3, 4, 5 days since pitchers and catchers have reported and some of the stuff going on. I think, and I'm all for this too, the fact that the Marlins are going to try some different things. They're going to try new things. Why not? We're seeing all sorts of stuff going on there with fielding drills, with different types of gloves, with different types of all sorts of stuff going on. So the Marlins are going to try, new things. And that sounds fun. Some of it will work, some of it won't. Some of it, the Marlins will be laughed at. Some of it, they won't. They'll look like geniuses. I don't know. But overall, a fun presser with a lot of sound bites and some clarity on where we're going with Sandy Alcantara. And unfortunately, we are going the way that we know we're going. Nevertheless, guys, that has been Marlins Uncorked on Monday, the 17th of Feb. Reminder, this episode, whilst it has been live streamed into Twitter, yes, my technology advances are improving. This also will be available on YouTube after as your free-to-air episode of the week and available wherever you get your pods. If you want any more Marlins Uncorked content this week, reminder, there is a minimum of 2 episodes per week that are subscriber only. Head over to my Patreon. There's a link in my Twitter profile, and you can subscribe there. It is $3 something a month at the moment for the first 30 people to subscribe. So if you want more, hit subscribe. If you don't, then you get one free per week. It's all good. Guys, I've been Peter Pratt. That's been Marlins Uncorked. And we've enjoyed talking about Bruce Sherman, Peter Bendix. I look forward to seeing you, hopefully, on Patreon later on this week. See you then, guys.